welcome to today's Business Builders Podcast. My name is Tom Borg, and with us we have Mr. Marc Perry. Marc is back again. Marc is President and CEO of Advantage Communications Incorporated. Marc, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Tom. It's great to be back here with you again, and I appreciate the opportunity to sit with you.
Great. Well, Marc, today we're going to launch into some more of your information about how a business can really take advantage of its marketing strategies. But to begin, just for some of our listeners who may not be familiar with you, could you tell us a little bit about your organization and what you do?
Advantage Communications is a full-service marketing communications company that works with companies by developing sound strategies that are effective and exciting in building campaigns for either traditional or digital communications.
So let me ask you, what are some of the strategies of a good marketing campaign?
Well, I think the strategies, there's some characteristics that goes into making a strong campaign. And any business really needs to really think about very strategically about their advertising and what areas that you want to focus on. How do you really build on a good campaign that has breakthrough, that has memorability, that's exciting, and so forth. And it really begins with, number one, having a clear and concise message. You know, the more that you can make it simple, the more people are going to be able to memorize it, know it, and it'll have impact. You're going to be able to reach people. As it becomes more and more complex, it's a lot more difficult for people to follow along. So that's the number one characteristic is really being clear and concise. And I'd say a very strong, which could be almost a number one, is understanding who your target is. And when you're speaking to you, because you don't want to speak to everybody, because that's impossible. You can't speak to everybody.
Right.
So you want to know who is probably the most interested in buying your product. And then from there, I would say you'd want to develop like an avatar, meaning that as a customer profile, it starts with the demographics, gender, age, income, where they live, that type of thing. And then you roll in the psychographics. All right, what are the lifestyles of these people? What do they like to do in their leisure time? Are they Macy's shoppers or are they Nordstrom shoppers? Are they Cadillac drivers or are they Jeeps? So the more you can pull that information together and you kind of lay it out, and you can even put together a figurine of what this person kind of looks like. It's female, and you know, she likes to wear these kind of shoes, so she likes to wear these kind of hats and bags and so forth. This is where she shops, etc. This is the kind of money she makes. Now you have a target. Now you have something that you hand to your design team, your agency, to say, look, this is who I want to reach. And from that, that's where their creativity begins to really live and to be able to come up with some things that are exciting.
Makes
so you
sense.
really want to know who your target audience is.
Yeah, make sure you're very clear and targeted in who you're really looking to advertise to.
Absolutely. Because, you know, just that example you're talking about now is that if you were a particular, if you're selling like cars, for example, there's certain magazines that you'd want to be in front of to go after that particular audience. Because in cars, there's different vehicles that appeal to different consumers. There's people who are truck drivers that wouldn't consider driving an economy vehicle that, you know, is like a Ford Focus or something like that.
Right.
And so you would find them in different magazines, or maybe not a magazine at all. You may find them on radio. You may find them on television more so. And so that's how you want to segment those markets and segment those customers and have targeted communications for them.
I see. Very good.
Another area is as you're creating it, and you tuned right into it, like a magazine, it needs to be visually appealing. And so that, you know, when it's visually appealing, we get bombarded with advertising messages throughout the day. You know, you see them on television, you hear them on the radio as you're getting dressed maybe in the morning, whatever, as you pick up a magazine or a newspaper. I mean, there's messages all around. You get on your phone and you start leafing through your social media, and there's ads that are popping up and so forth. And those are all targeted, as you well know as well. So what do you do to have some breakthrough? And it begins with it being visual. And another area that I'd kind of put with that is visually, and then your audible needs to be clear. People like, whether it's podcast or radio commercial, whatever, if they don't hear, can't hear it well, if there's something that's in there that's just obtrusive, they're going to tune it out. So, the audible part of it is just as important as the visual part.
Makes sense. You're telling us then we're bombarded by ads all day long. We don't even
Yes.
realize it in some cases.
Oh, absolutely. There's thousands of images that are coming us throughout the day.
Mm-hmm.
Particularly as when we were outside of our homes working.
Mm-hmm.
When you're moving about the day and you're moving around, even you kind of do that now, even to make a run here or there to Costco or something during the day, whatever. But those messages are around us all the time. And it's
Mm-hmm.
about, having something in there that, number one, is that is concise, it's simple, it's easy to remember. I mean, so that's the next point, is that memorable. It needs to be memorable,
Mm-hmm.
because you need to be able to have recall, so that the next time you're in a buying situation where they're buying your product or service, you're rising to the top of the list. They're thinking about your product.
Mm-hmm.
And I can remember when early in my career, I worked for Chevrolet, and I called on dealers. And there was this one particular dealership. Their line was, they have a big stack of money in their hand. Is where you always save more money. It's slowly down C&E, where you always save more money. And they were on so much. Not only was it memorable, but I can remember talking to one of the dealers, they were partners. He says, we could come off of the air for a couple of weeks and people still thought we were on.
Hmm.
And
Wow.
and the thing is that they had the consistency of the memorable line that always, where you always save more money. Tough to find, but hard to beat. And where you always save more money. That was their
Mm-hmm.
line. Because it was right off a highway where there was no exit. You had to go up and around. It was hard to get to, tough to
Mm-hmm.
find,
Mm-hmm.
but tough to beat.
Mm-hmm.
And so they ran with that for years. They were like number 8 in the country of volume of all dealerships.
That's impressive.
Yeah, they sold a lot of cars. The next area that I would highly think about what you want customers to do, and that's having a call to action. So that in your ad, you got this great sounding ad, a great looking ad, but what is it that you want them to do? Do you want them to come and shop? Do you want them to come and buy? Do you want them to click right here and buy now? You need to be very direct of what you want them to do, what those expectations are. And so we see that particularly really had come to life, as always has kind of been there, but has really come to life in social media marketing,
Mm-hmm.
because a lot of it is the click through right now. You're looking for those click through rates, what people are
Mm-hmm.
doing to click on your ad. How long are they staying when they're there? And what do you want them to do when they're there? When they get to your website, what do you want them to do? And
Mm-hmm.
so you want to, is that the goal? So you need to think all these things out before you give the assignment over to your advertising team
Mm-hmm.
or agency or whoever's doing the work for you, is that you're actually helping them with this roadmap.
Right.
You're telling them, who the target customer is. You're telling them that, hey, it needs to be visually appealing. It needs to have a great sound as well to it, that it needs to be memorable. What we're going to have them do, they want some great recall.
Mm-hmm.
Then certainly, what is it ultimately we want them to do? What is that
Yeah.
call to action that we want them to do?
Makes sense.
And then the next area is being consistent. You know, Having a consistent ad, what that means is that you want to have that same sound, feel, whether you come across it on radio, whether you come across it on television. This is coming from the same entity. It's from the same product line, from the same family of services. Whether you run into it on it's your cosmetic look, if you will, of your product, of your ad. It has the
Mm.
same coloring, the same
Mm-hmm.
theme. Does it have the same music in it? Because the more that you can keep the simplicity of it and keep things the same, people can remember.
That's
It'll be
right.
it'll be memorable. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's a very strong attribute of one of the characteristics on the list. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that
I guess, Mark, I should add to that. And well, you mentioned earlier how it's important to be noticed and to be out there. And with so many things coming at us all the time, if it's something that's familiar, that's something they can identify with, that just makes them feel more comfortable. I would think, knowing that that it's consistent in what the messages that you're bringing across, the look, the feel, the sound, all of that.
Yeah, the next layer to that is the association with it being to your brand.
Oh, mm-hmm.
That look that you just talked about, that sound is being associated to the Tom Borg brand,
Okay.
in terms of how you are positioning yourself in the marketplace. So that when they see your ad, it's never out of place in terms of how they see you, is that you're always, when you see Tom Borg's brand, it has a suit on, it has a nice tie, it has a shirt on, he has a shirt on, and you can always trust in what he's telling you that's going to be true in what he's saying. And
Mm-hmm.
so those are attributes that you want to pull out and be consistent with as much as possible. The consistency goes in with the type of copy that you're writing. Its consistency is the messaging across all channels that you're on, that you're all getting that same message, driving that same call to action of what you want people to do
Mm-hmm.
ultimately when they see and hear, feel your ad.
Makes sense. Excellent.
Another area is of the ad is really testing your ad. And what that is that once you put together an ad campaign and before you actually produce it, and you got storyboards and you've got a copy of what it sounds like, you've written it and so forth, is have an informal market study of family and friends that you share this concept with them and this idea, what it sounds like, who's going to hear it and that type of thing, and you get a reaction, get an honest reaction from them, and I'm sure they'll give you an honest one. And that'll help steer you to make sure that you're not making maybe some very obvious mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
And don't be afraid to make a mistake.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, be flexible in the fact that you get out there and say, oh, wait a minute, we need to change this. There's nothing wrong with that. If
Mm-hmm.
it's wrong, correct it.
Right.
But you can avoid a lot of that if you're testing it. Now you have the budget, you could do a focus group
Mm-hmm.
where you bring in people who are like your target audience, and you present this campaign to them of what
Okay.
it looks like, what it sounds like, tell them where they'd hear it on, what kind of radio station they'd hear it on, or what kind of TV station, or it would be on a particular type of podcast. This is what it sounds like, and get a reaction from them from what they feel like. And
Mm-hmm.
that's some valuable information that you get. I really enjoyed that part of my job when I was working for another ad agency, of
Mm-hmm.
being behind the two-way mirrored glass and watching the focus group in action and how people reacted to campaigns, whether it
Mm-hmm.
was a theme line or whether it was the actual ad. Maybe there was a line in the ad that we were really testing to kind of see if it was something that we wanted to move forward with or not. And you get some great feedback from those people that would be engaged and be a part of that process.
Mm-hmm. Mark, when you do those focus groups, typically how many people are in that focus group? How many potential clients are in there?
Yeah, usually the ones that I've been with, there were somewhere between 3 to 6 groups.
Mm-hmm.
And in those groups, there were somewhere between 4 to 6 people.
Hmm.
They weren't real large, but
Mm-hmm.
there would be a good cross section of people that we would have. And it was a very serious type of thing. I mean, they'd go through it. I've been there where they've asked a couple of people to leave when, they were maybe disruptive or something like that, or it's just, it's not creating the right environment for it being
Right.
conducive. They've asked
Mm-hmm.
them to leave.
Mm-hmm.
But they've been very valuable. And what was really interesting is that it helped us to tell our client, in terms of help strengthen our case of who's buying, who potentially could be buying their product. When we
Mm-hmm.
were able to show them, remember I was talking about that target profile of the consumer.
Mm-hmm.
So in these 6 different groups, we would have 6 different those same targets that are in that group. These would
Mm-hmm.
be women that we were talking to at that time when the Ford Edge was first coming out. That
Mm-hmm.
this was going to have a stronger appeal, they thought, to women. And so we wanted to get their input largely in terms of what they thought about these ad campaigns.
Hmm.
What was really important to them, the product, what features that we needed to lift out. And
Mm-hmm.
so it
So
becomes
now,
very valuable.
absolutely. So when you do those focus groups, okay, you do them, then afterwards, how do you take that information and process it so that's
Yeah,
meaningful to the
there,
client.
there's a the facilitator within that group, within those focus groups,
Hmm.
would lead the discussion,
I see.
would walk them through the campaign, would go through those salient points and so forth. Then at the end, they would go back and look at the recording and also look at their notes and jot down things that came out, things that we were looking for, score them. And at the very end, there was a report that would come out that would give an analysis of what the feedback was from those particular prospects, from those particular candidates that participated in the program.
Mm-hmm.
And then that was the roadmap that we would look to judge by whether or not we're hitting the target or we've got the right messaging going for the right target.
I got you. So what you folks do then is you go ahead and analyze what happened during that focus group, draw the data out, and then make it meaningful to the client so they can then use that as part of their campaign in a meaningful manner. Sounds
Right.
like.
It's kind of like creating some guardrails, if you will, for your ad campaign, making
Hmm.
sure we're talking to the right people and we're hitting them in their heart spots where what there is appealing to these people that we're going after.
I
You know,
got you.
where we're talking their language, if you will.
Hmm.
It's hedging your bet, if you will,
Hmm.
in terms of what you're doing in the marketplace.
Makes sense. Makes sense. What's the
The,
next step?
the next step, I talked a little bit about being flexible.
Hmm.
And so the flexibility of it all is that, you know, if you're in that situation where, you know, you kind of thought you had this great idea and you ran it by the focus group and they blew it out the water,
Hmm.
then maybe that's something you should pull back on, or you make an adjustment, you have an alternate line or something like that. And
Hmm.
don't be afraid to do that. Then the ninth uh, uh, characteristic
Hmm.
is probably one of the ones that business owners dial into very, very quickly. What's the budget?
Yeah, yeah. How much is it going to cost? Right.
Yeah, what's the cost of this? And so the thing is that in creating an ad campaign, creating the ad is just the one element of it. The other factor is the media. You know, how much TV time do we need to buy? How
Hmm.
many ads do we need to place online? You know, how many radio spots? When do we need to be on? And so you
Hmm.
need to have an effective campaign that you can actually get your message out, because people aren't going to necessarily see it if it goes out just one time, right? So you need to be out there frequently. You need to know when's the best time that your consumers or your prospect is most likely to be in the marketplace to make they can have some engagement with your commercial or your ad or so forth. So that's an important part. I know some companies have a rule of fact: if you spend so much on your ad, that 10% of it goes on your ad, and then 10 times that amount that you spend on your ad is what you spend in media. You know, I mean, so it was a different. There's different methods of how you want to do that, but the point is that you need to have adequate amount of money to be able to advertise and be in the media to actually run your ads.
Hmm.
That's very important.
How long does a typical ad campaign run? How many days, months?
That's a great question. Somewhere the usual schedule for media is like about 13 weeks.
Hmm.
So it's, you know, if you get the budget to do 13 weeks back to back, it's depending upon, you know, if your budget can stand that. If not, then maybe there's later in the year you come back and you split it up. You maybe go on for a quarter and you come out the following quarter.
Hmm.
So yeah, but about 13 weeks is a campaign time to start with.
Makes sense.
And then finally is once you've gone through all these steps of creating the ad campaign, the consistency of it, the target, the flexibility of it, and so forth, and testing it, then it's really about measuring it. How
Mm,
effective was the ad campaign?
sure.
You know, and so you go back and then you can assess the standpoint: do we do it again? You know, it could be something that's an annual thing that's, you know, around, like, for example, retail, as you well know, is
Hmm.
that this is the time. I mean, the December is the biggest time of the year that they sell their products. I mean, some of
Hmm.
these companies make all of their money, like 90% of their profits are
Wow.
made during the Christmas season.
Mhm.
So does this campaign warrant being in the system, warrant being maybe in Black Friday next year
Mhm.
or the following year, that type of thing. And so if you remember, there was a long time that Lexus used to run the campaign around Christmas time with the bows on the cars, December to remember or something
Mm.
along those lines.
Mhm.
Is that but that campaign ran for years,
Hmm.
and they find that it was effective. You could bring it back, and it's you see that in some other campaigns as well. Well, that
Mhm.
particularly in the auto industry, that those are the really big spenders.
Right.
And
So let's say it's a small business. What type of recommendations would you have for a small business that was wanting to put together an ad campaign?
it's the same principles. We're just at
Mhm.
their scale.
Just
I
scale
mean,
it down.
you just scale it down from the biggest standpoint is going to be budget. And it's
Mhm.
going to be and also channels. Where are your customers at? Where are they mostly going to be online, or are you
Mm.
seeing that they're buying from they're calling you up, they're going
Mhm.
online to buy your product, or they're still coming into the store? How
Mhm.
can they find out information about you?
Right.
So it's about really understanding where they live and play, work and play from a
Mhm.
media standpoint, so you can make sure your message is placed in front of them.
Mhm.
And the most cost effective way would be through social media. It's
Mhm.
much more inexpensive than trying to do an ad campaign on television for a small
Mhm.
business.
Right.
You
Well,
know,
with the campaigns, what type of result do you normally get for your clients? What percentage do they get in terms of returns? Was
that's kind of a smorgasbord all over the place. I don't know if there's really a full return. It would be you'd have to compare apples to apples.
Mhm.
You know, if you were a car dealer, so what have you done at another car dealership that really brought in the traffic, and how was the impact of the campaign that you created to
Mhm.
help sell the vehicles? But even in that case, you know, in my experience in that business is that we could drive the traffic to the dealer,
Mhm.
but it's up to the dealer to sell the product.
Right.
I mean, we couldn't promise that if you get there and you got number one, maybe you didn't have the inventory they were looking for,
Mhm.
or maybe your salespeople weren't the best at what they were doing, and maybe it created some ill situations that you couldn't get a deal closed. So
Mhm.
there's other factors that go into that. So this is
Mhm.
just helping you get the best opportunity to
Mhm.
close the most deals that you possibly can.
Makes sense. So that has to work with whatever else they're doing to once they get those leads that come into their business to be able to handle those leads properly, to have the right salespeople deal with those people, ask the right questions, close the sales, so to speak.
Right. And so that's why it's good when you come up with these campaigns is to sit down with your sales team and let them know what the campaign is, when the
Mm-hmm.
campaign's going to happen, what's the theme of the campaign. You want them to be engaged in as much as well to be informed, so that when the customer comes through the door, that there's this anticipation level that you're going to have a conversation of expectation that you're meeting with them.
Makes sense. That's a great point, Mark, to make sure your team is on the same page as the group in the organization that's putting this whole campaign together, that
Right.
they're communicating and letting them know, here's what we're planning on doing, here's how you fit in, and here's how we want you to respond to the additional leads that we'll be getting, additional traffic we'll be getting from the
Right.
marketing efforts we're making.
Right.
Yeah,
Exactly.
that
Exactly.
makes total sense. Yeah, that's great. Well, Mark, I know we're just about out of time here, but what would be one of the, and we're going to have you back, by the way, there's so much more that you have to offer to us. What would be one of your major recommendations as we finish up this program today for our listening audience on what they can do to take advantage of their marketing strategies?
I would say the target audience is spend
Mm,
some time and really understanding who your audience is,
mm-hmm,
and not only understanding, but what is it that what makes them tick, what makes them, what do they respond to, what's part of their lifestyle that they like, in terms of how they interact with your product, what are the elements or attributes of your product that it's going to have to be the most appealing to them. The
mm-hmm,
more you understand who they are, I think helps you direct how your campaigns can be executed, designed, and produced. Or design, produce, and execute is probably how a better way to say that.
Mm-hmm.
So I would highly recommend that time is taken to do that. So much of this is, as you can kind of get a feel for, is somewhat of a science. So,
Mm-hmm.
and
Sure.
that's part of the science, is understanding who that target is.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other part is making sure that you have a realistic budget to be able to execute your
Mm-hmm.
campaign. This is maybe advertising, maybe it's flyers right now for you. Maybe
Mm.
you're on a smaller budget than you were talking before, and maybe there's things inside your retail environment that you could do, things that pull out the information that those target consumers are looking for, that you could
Mm-hmm.
do in the way of posters or signs within the business.
All right. Well, Mark, you definitely have something here for our viewing audience today. Now, if people want to get a hold of you, get some help from you and your company, how do they get a hold of you?
They can go to mperry at advantageci.com.
Excellent.
That's
Well,
mperry at advantageci.com.
fantastic. I'll make sure I get that up on the screen as well, but for our listening audience, they'll hear that from you directly. Mark, well, thank you again so much for being on the program. We look forward to having you back next time. And as always, hey, we appreciate your expertise.
Thank you, Tom.
You're welcome.